Welcome to week 7 of Get Growing, Brownfield Spring Series of CAB Conversations. This week we are one person short. Keith is actually en route to French Lick, Indiana for a meeting, so we will miss him this week. But we will start in Nebraska with Zach Hunnicut and see what's going on around the Corn Belt. Zach?
Well, we're actually drying out a little bit here. We missed some big rain chances over the weekend. They were talking 2 or 3 inches of rain potentially, but ended up staying to the west, which was probably best for everybody involved because we got obviously a lot of guys here that need to be replanting, and so far to the west in Nebraska there was anywhere from an inch to, I think the highest I saw was about 7 inches of rain in some places that haven't seen that in years. So overall the weather has turned out pretty well for most everybody over the last few days. I got a lot of guys side dressing. That's what I'm hoping to be doing this afternoon, this evening. Anything that didn't get hailed is really looking pretty good.
We'll talk a little bit more replant and some of those issues coming up in a little bit. Judy, let's jump to central Illinois. How are things looking in your area?
Well, we're pretty wet today. Let's see, Saturday night, we'll start with that. We had 1.5 inches of rain with that system that went through, and actually other people around us, they had like 3 inches or more. So had pretty good rain throughout the area here. And we had another rain last night, and it's been drizzling all day this morning.
I'm assuming not too much field work being done in your area either.
No, but like, farmers do, now we're complaining about we can't get the hay up, so.
I was in the field when we started getting rain, so we had serious water standing. Now we're in the dry out mode and got a lot of things to do and a lot of I'm sure that there's going to be some replanting because of the holes and things like that as well. So, but yeah, it's been extremely wet. It could get serious here before long. It could be double crop planting instead of first crop planting the way it's going.
Thanks, Dave. Alan, what about you in central Ohio?
Actually, things are starting to look really pretty good, Megan. I would say we're finished side dressing. We're not going to side dress our late planted corn. We put the full amount of in on right when we planted because it was getting later. So we finished side dressing what we needed to. Most guys in our area are either finishing up or are finished side dressing and doing a lot of spraying going on. I mean, the corn since we talked last week is really taken off. We've had showers, but nothing heavy here. And right now, the rain that's moving across has just got here about an hour ago. So we're having actually a nice shower right now. And we'll take it. I mean, with the heat, we'll take it because stuff is really starting to grow. So,
Adam, how about you in western Missouri?
We've been at a standstill since we talked last week. Seems like every other day we get a rain. Last week when we talked, we had 3.5 inches, and I know for a fact since then we've had 2 inches on top of that. So we're wet, soggy, but corn's kind of loving it. It's taking off and growing. You can almost sit there and watch it grow. So it's liking it. But we got water standing around. We need some heat. We've been pretty cool. I think right now it's only like 65 degrees and hasn't been much warmer than that the last couple of days. It's been in the 70s, mid-70s. Beans are coming on, looking good. But we just really need it to dry out so we can get back to work.
Zach, you said you guys missed rains, which was probably beneficial. Do you think maybe later in the growing season that you're going to wish you had those rains, or are you okay with missing this one?
We're far enough west that we just kind of assume that we're going to be missing rain later in the growing season. Anything we get from about the 20th of June onward is just kind of a bonus. At this point is okay, and we have a 60% chance rain tomorrow night, 50% this weekend. So I mean, it looks like we're stacked up to get some pretty decent rain. So at this point, we're okay. I mean, it's a little tough to believe, considering where we were 2 months ago, that we're okay with missing out on a couple inches of rain because we were as dry as we've been in a long time.
How much has the ground moisture recovered in the last couple of months?
We're pretty well fully saturated, but we were so wet in the fall that it pretty much soaked everything up and just stayed there. So we were in a pretty good moisture situation in the soil, even though up top it was getting a little powdery at times. We had some days where it really started to get dusty. We're really in good shape.
Judi, you mentioned you're not able to get the hay up, but at this point, are you happy to get those rains that you can maybe build up a little ground moisture for the corn?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll take the rains, definitely. Yeah, it's just a lot of people, don't even have their first, cutting of hay up. We have about almost all our first cutting of hay up. So we're getting to where some of it's going to be on the first cutting while we're doing the second cutting on what we had done first. So, but then with the rains too, we were just about ready to start spraying some beans, and so if we keep getting these rains, we'll be behind on spraying the beans. And
Dave, for you here in Indiana, I talked to Sean Castile a little bit in recent weeks, who's a Purdue Extension soybean specialist, by the way, for everybody else. And Sean talked about switching maturities and soybeans, and at that point, where you are now and with what you have left, are you thinking about switching maturities on soybeans and even for maybe areas that folks may have some replants?
Well, obviously, the late threes is what we've got slotted for what we've got left anyway. So, and that's, I've rechecked and we're okay on the 3.7s, 3.6s, and like that. We've already got all our earlier beans, 3.3s, 2.9s, and 3.3, 3.4 planted. And so it's following into a natural progression on the maturity. The problem with doing replants into areas that if you go at the later maturity and you have to wait and go back, that's always a pain. That's what a lot of guys do, and depending how big the areas are. So it's a question, is a big enough area to cause me to go back in? A lot of times it's cosmetic. You might be better off planting an earlier variety so that they mature at the same kind of timing and take a slight loss and not have to come back in.
Who who thinks that they might have replant or may have to replant? Adam, Allen, either one of you?
Right now, no. Actually, I was doing some scouting yesterday on beans that we'd finished up planting there a week ago Saturday, and boy, they're just looking really nice. They're coming up right down the rows, and we haven't seen any spots where we're going to have to replant. That we're pretty fortunate.
I don't think we're going to have as much as what I would have said we were going to last week when we had that 3.5-inch rain overnight. We got the water off the top and got another shower to wash the bean leaves off, and they really look good. I think most of them are going to make it. Just very small areas, end rows and stuff that we might have to go back and touch up. But as a lot of high volume replant, no, I don't think so.
Let's talk about pest issues. Anybody seeing any pest scouting things? What are you seeing in the field when you get out there and look? Zach, we'll start with you in Nebraska.
Still kind of in the same shape we were last time we talked. We're getting our spraying done. They're not seeing a big flush of anything in particular that's causing us problems. Not seeing any bug pressure.
Judi, what about you in Illinois?
We've found some giant ragweed in some of the beans we were hoping to get sprayed this week. Other than that, just the usual stuff. Now, if it's been staying wet and cool, we're going to be worried about maybe some mold or fungus, but really there hasn't been hardly any, that many flies around. So, I mean, the insects are just really low this year.
Allen, any issues in the crops that you're seeing?
No, pest-wise, there's none at all. With the treatments they have on the seed, it seems to carry them through up to a foot tall, really. Unless we turn extremely dry, we may have an aphid problem or something like that. But there's absolutely nothing going on pest-wise right now.
Adam, how about Missouri?
Kind of the same report everybody else is giving. I haven't seen a lot of pest in the corn. Going to start keeping a closer eye on the beans stage they're at.
The President signed the Water Resources Reform and Development Act into law today for you guys that utilize the waterways and really for all of agriculture. What are your thoughts on the legislation and the fact that maybe this will be a step in the right direction for us to get in and maybe get some work done on the locks and dams?
Well, it was long overdue, for one thing, and people don't realize how much grain goes through the water system from the upper Midwest to, greater Ohio Valley. So there's a lot of need, and we're glad that that did get passed.
Yeah, I think people think of a lot of the barge traffic, the Ohio and the Mississippi, but we're part of the Mississippi drainage basin too, and our basis is affected by what happens on the river, and anything that can be done to make the traffic flow better, make it easier to get grain down the river. I mean, that helps all of us quite a bit. As long as that infrastructure is being repaired and developed, that's a good thing for all of us.
There's two things the U.S. government should be doing: is have a strong defense and have a modern transportation system, because the modern transportation system is going to be the best thing for the economy, in my opinion. So,
you guys bring up basis. For folks maybe that are watching, what is the easiest way for you to explain what basis is and its function?
Basis is margin, basically. Chicago Board of Trade is typically how grain is traded, and the basis difference, it could be a minus or it could be positive, depending on who needs what, or the basis is the difference between Chicago and what you're going to get, depending on who you're shipping to.
What questions do you have for each other?
Question for Zach. I always have a question for Zach. After the hailstorm last week, what are we looking at out there?
I know locally there have been some guys getting out and replanting beans that got hailed. There's fields out there that, from pictures we've seen and stuff, it's got to be just sort of a walkout and say, well, that's 100% lost. But, some of the stuff's a little more resilient, I think, maybe we give it credit for. And so I think we're still a few days away from knowing for sure what's going on. When do you guys start getting nervous by so many consecutive days of dry weather?
Part of it has to do with how hot we are. If we're on the cooler side, then obviously you can prolong that. But we always like it cool and kind of moist around pollination. That's a big key area. From then on, if you can catch a rain like every other week, once we get into July, if you can get a good rain once every 2 weeks or something like that, depending on how hot it is, that usually carries us.
Zach, the old wise tale here used to be an inch a week. These new hybrids have made a world of difference for us in our area. We have tight clay soils, and so typically if we have ample subsoil moisture, they get down there and they get the moisture. And
I'd say for us here that probably that 10-day range, probably, like everybody else said, it depends a lot on the temperature. I'm probably the farthest south out of all of us. And we can get up to 100 plus degrees during the day, and our problem is we don't cool off at night a lot of times, and that's what kills our top end yield here is our heat. Our bottom soils, they retain water really well. Now our hill ground's a lot thinner, and it needs rain more often. So I'd say kind of probably that 7 to 10 day range. You need the rain in there.
it'd be the soil type. So the heavier soils, of course, you can go longer. But right around 2 weeks is when we start thinking we need another rain. But our lighter soils need more often than that.
What's your population goal when you're planting corn and soybeans?
Yeah, corn that varies a little bit by variety, but we're generally going to be dropping 32 to 37. Where we're pretty much all irrigated. We're shooting for some pretty high top and yield goals. If we get some dryland corners, we'll drop down to 24 to 27. As far as beans, we usually drop somewhere between 120 and 150.
Oh, actually, it's pretty similar, right around 30,000.
Well, we're pretty constant, 34 to 36,000 on corn, and then we're 165 to 185 on beans.
We are in the 31 to 34 range on corn. If we get into some heavier soils, we'll bump at 34, 35, but that's about as heavy as we dare go. On the beans, we've been consistently lowering them down, and actually this year we went in the 140, 45 range on a couple of farms. And I was a little nervous doing it, just because it seems like you get one shot when you go in, but typically in the past we've been 170 to 80, and the lower we go, seems like if you're planting too thick, they're nothing but a weed.
We've been bumping our corn population up a little bit and pulling our beans back the last couple of years. I think the lowest we planted corn this year was 27.9, 28, somewhere around there. And irrigated acres, we pushed it up to around 34,000. And the beans, we plant somewhere around 140,000, usually pretty standard. We had been 145, 150 in the past, and like so, pulling it back. And that's what I've been hearing from everybody is the lower population is better on the beans. The only problem I see with that is, like years this year when you're trying to get a bean to push through the crust and a lower population, that they're not all working together. When you have a higher population, they're all working together to push that crust. So.
Yeah, on the row width on the beans, you guys all 15-inch rows?
We're usually 30-inch. We did plant one field this year at 15, which was kind of annoying plant because you basically had to plant the field twice since we have 30-inch row planters. And we've actually experimented with a diamond pattern formation, plant at a 30-degree angle one way and come back another 30-degree angle. And actually, the little strips we did last year, diamond just out-yielded the 15, which just out-yielded the 30s.
We've all kind of talked about side dress, and I was curious how everybody does it. If you're knifing in liquid in between the rows, or are you top dressing with a dry spread?
We are knifing in 28 between the rows. There is a co-op in our area that is really getting into throwing urea out over the top. We haven't tried that yet. They've done it a couple years now, and they think it's really good, but we're still knifing in 28.
Currently, that's the way we're doing it as well, but this might be a year that we start putting some urea on because of the lateness.
Yeah, we knife in 32 with some sulfur in it, and then we'll come back with a couple. We get some Y drops on our sprayer. We'll dribble on some nitrogen a couple more times throughout the season.
We knife it in here ourselves, but it's gotten big the last couple of years. The co-op spreading it with their dry boxes, spreading urea, and most of them are putting polymer coating on it. That's supposed to help, but everybody burns their leaves. It kind of turns the leaf tips brown on it here, some kind of a burn, and then you also have to have a rain to get it in the ground then. So, but it's been popular. I think everybody likes it because it's a little faster and you have a bigger window of putting it on with a tall sprayer as soon as trying to get through with the bar.